Thank you. Good evening. It's presently 3:01, and we'll go ahead and call the August 9th, 2020 meeting of the Board of Elections and Registrars for Cobb County to order. The first matter on the agenda is public comment. Do we have a list? There are no speakers? Okay, thank you. Moving on, the second matter on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the meeting held on July 19th, 2021. Fellow board members, we've had an opportunity to review the minutes.
Yes.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion. Pass.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the meeting minutes of this board for the meeting held on July 19th. All of those in favor, please denote by pressing yes. Looks like it's unanimous. Thank you. We'll continue with the agenda. The third item on the agenda is public hearing. I believe Mr. Gunn will be presenting this.
Thank you. So we have periodically annexations from the cities that we go through and hear to make the precinct boundaries match what the city boundaries are. And during election years, we're not able to do that due to timing and other efficiencies in the office. But what we have here are a list, and if you would like, Chairwoman, I'll go through city by city and address by address. We'll talk about the voters that are within those parcels. And then at the end, I recommend a public hearing.
Yes.
Is that so? Okay. So in your packets, I believe they are in alphabetical order with the exception of Kennesaw. And Kennesaw 2A are two de-annexations that we'll cover at the end. But with Ackworth, pardon me, that's the first map you'll have there. Ackworth 1B, the property addresses 4865 and 4879 Cowan Road. Both properties are residential, and 3 voters will be affected by that change. With Ackworth 1C, we have 2808 Baker Road, 2820 Baker Road, 4801 White Lake Drive, 4803 White Lake Drive, 4807 White Lake Drive, 4815 White Lake Drive, 4817 White Lake Drive, and 4819 White Lake Drive, with 14 voters affected throughout those parcels. So that concludes the annexations with the city of Ackworth. And we'll move on to Austell, which has 2 properties being annexed, 2337 Clay Road and 2347 Clay Road. 2337 is a residential property, and 2347 is commercial. 2 voters there. The next city we have is Marietta. So Marietta 3B, the precinct, has 1501 Sandtown Road and 1521 Sandtown Road, both residential properties, 1 voter. Marietta 4B, address 1468 Cobb Parkway North, residential, no voters. And Marietta 6B is 1083 Allgood Road, no voters. I believe that is a church property. So a total of 1 there in the city of Marietta, 1 voter. Next up, we have Powder Springs. Powder Springs 3A, 1 property, 4420 Macedonia Road. It's residential with no voters. And next is Smyrna. two properties, both in Smyrna 3A, 2474 Adams Drive and 2791 Madison Street, both residential and no voters currently. And so the last two properties are in Kennesaw, Precinct Kennesaw 2A. These are de-annexations, so these pieces of property will move out from the city limits, out of the municipality, and back into the county precinct. And it's 2083 Shillingwood Drive, 3 voters, and 2108 Shillingwood Drive with 2 voters. And we have the reasoning here listed as a residential issue with the 911 service. Most de-annexations are voter requested, or citizen requested there. Again, all of these have already been voted on in their municipalities, so what we seek to achieve here is board approval to make the precinct lines now match the municipal lines, so that those voters, when they show up to the poll, will be able to access a ballot with their relevant races on the ballot.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Annexations and de-annexations? Yes, sir. If you'll take the podium.
No.
Hey.
Hi
my
there,
name is
how are
Rex
you?
Harper. Yeah, I was just have a question, follow-up to this on the Austell 1A, the property at 2347 Clay Road. I think you said it was commercial.
2337, sir, or 2347?
47.
That's what we have. We have.
Yes, that's been denoted as commercial to.
Do we assign, how would somebody be assigned that residence to be eligible to vote?
Well, it's not a resident, sir, and I believe, Mr. Gunn, please correct me if I'm wrong, based upon the notes that I took while you were speaking, 2337 is residential, 2347 is commercial, and I believe there are 2 voters assigned to 2337. Is that correct?
Correct.
So
Okay,
there.
my question is, what's to prevent somebody from, I mean, do we have other residential properties? I'm sorry, this might be out of left field, but do we have other commercial properties within all the county area, within voting precincts?
Yes, sir. During the course of Mr. Gunn's presentation, he did make reference to various addresses denoting as to whether they were residential or commercial.
Right. But this is the only one that I heard that was commercial.
No, there are definitely others. There were
Okay,
others, correct,
but
Mr. Gunn?
it's common practice to include the commercials properties in with the
In a
the voting
precinct?
precinct. I mean, I wouldn't think that anybody could use that property address to register to vote, is what my basic question is.
The intent in putting it in the, formally noting it as part of the precinct is not, as I understand it, to provide anyone the opportunity to vote. It's simply to denote that this was a part of an annexation.
It's within the
And it's
lines.
within the lines. It's not to, such that anyone can say, okay, well, this property is now within the lines, notwithstanding the fact it's commercial, I'm going to register to vote. It's to be certain
Okay.
that the records are aligned, that these addresses that were the subject of an annexation are in this precinct.
And I would assume likewise that when somebody would go to vote, if they would use this 2347 Clay Road as their residence, that it would be flagged at whenever the records would come up.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Any further comment? Okay. Mr. Gunn, did you have anything further?
I do not. Just to further clarify that what was just said is correct. When we have that information provided to us by the municipalities, then we're able to mark it in the voter registration system as a commercial address, which does flag a voter registration if it were to come through in our system or via mail, however we receive it. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Is there a motion?
That we accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the previously listed annexations as well as de-annexations be approved. If board members will register your votes, please. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Chairwoman, if I might also clarify, the Board of Commissioners will be finalizing that because those are boundary changes that's under the authority of the commissioners. So you're recommending that it be approved by the commissioners with that motion.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Knebler. Good evening.
Okay. Hello, everyone. The next thing that I have to present is requesting the approval to change our Kennesaw 1A precinct from Influencers Church of Kennesaw to Kennesaw United Methodist Church. And this location, the background was that in last year, in 2020, the precinct was not able to continue as a precinct because they had some major electrical things that were going on, and they hoped to repair those items. So we had a temporary change for the November and the January election. And then when we had a June special election and runoff, they were still not able to have their repairs done. So we approved another temporary location to our Kennesaw 4A precinct. So now that we have completed that, moving forward, they have let us know that they don't see in the immediate future that they'll be able to repair those. So we are requesting that we move forward to the polling location change to Kennesaw United Methodist Church. And that would be effective today, so that for November 2nd election, that's where we would pick up as the Kennesaw 1A precinct.
Okay, thank you. Is there comment, questions from the board? Yes.
Question, don't we survey the facilities when they become a voting location that includes the electrical? Just curious, how did this happen? How did this?
Okay. To answer that, yes, we do survey the locations to make sure that they have the electrical, outlets and wattage that we need. We don't know what happened, whether it was a storm or some kind of water damage, or we don't know what caused their whole electrical to go
They
out.
surveyed it, it was okay. And then it was later that they had a shortfall.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I make a proposal, we accept it.
I'm sorry, did you have a question or comment? No? Okay. Yes. Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I make a proposal, we accept it.
Okay.
Move.
Is there a
Second.
second? It's been moved and properly seconded that we accept the approval, or we provide approval to change the polling location for precinct Kennesaw 1A from Influences Church to Kennesaw United Methodist Church. Those board members in favor, please register your vote.
Thank you.
It's unanimous, no opposition. Okay. Now we'll move on to the regular business. Mr. Gunn?
I am back. We wanted to give you an update on where we were with planning for advanced voting and vote by mail for the November municipal elections and the East Blast.
Okay.
And what I have here, my team has put together, the absentee team has put together a recommendation that we're working towards that will hopefully be finalized to have published to the public before the September 27th deadline for that. What we're recommending for advance in-person voting is a location at each one of the municipalities and 2 additional to be sure that we have good coverage throughout the county, we think geographically for voters, given that we do now have the county-wide. We're proposing that the city of Marietta vote at the main office, city of Ackworth at the Roberts School building, the city of Austell at the Austell Community Center, Kennesaw at the Ben Robertson Community Center, Powder Springs at the Ron Anderson Community Center, or the Ron Anderson Center Community Room, I apologize, and the Art Place is one of the county locations, and then King Springs Elementary School Brown Campus as the additional county location. The hours we propose are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturdays, the 16th and 23rd of October, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. In addition, we are planning to trial our absentee by mail drop-off locations where we'll have absentee ballot clerks throughout the county. In this case, 3 libraries is what we have chosen for the trial. Absentee ballot clerks located in these libraries to be able to accept ballots from voters who you may not feel comfortable using the mail or may not feel comfortable dropping them off in a crowded advance in-person location. And the hours we've chosen for the trial are 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. during the week of October 25th through the 30th at the Powder Springs Library, the West Cobb Regional Library, and the East Cobb Regional Library. In addition, we had looked at and thought that a good location would be the South Cobb Regional Library, but due to renovations during that time frame, they are unavailable. And again, this is a trial, and we want to be able to run our procedures, test it out in this time frame with the smaller impact to be able to get a feel for how it will work in a larger situation like next year's election cycle. In addition to, and I mentioned the week of October 25th through the 30th, that's the last week of advance in-person voting. That will give time for the ballots to be mailed, to get to the voters and have them vote the ballots before we staff these locations. We think it will have the best impact. We'll also have staff at the same hours and the same locations on November 1st and 2nd available as well. Do we have any questions from the board about this, or comment? I'm sorry.
I do have questions. I defer to my.
Have we ever used these before?
We have not. This is
All new.
So the drop boxes that we had last year due to an emergency order, which are now illegal, were heavily used and very popular with voters. Of course, they were available at many locations and 24/7. So obviously, we won't be able to staff a 24/7 location. But we felt that this would be a way to help the voters who may not be able to, for whatever circumstance, make it into in-person voting at any time. This will give them an additional option. And we'll have
They will be, I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
live absentee ballot clerks there to accept these ballots and bring them back to the office every night.
But when these places are closed, then nobody can put them in, right?
Correct, yeah, and it's not
Okay.
a box. You'll be handing them to a person as if you were handing in a ballot at an advance in-person site or at the main office.
Okay. And what procedures is a lot of accountability on that, or do they mark them in? How do they?
There will be. There'll be check-ins, there will be transit logs and audit sheets that accompany the whole process. And I'll be happy to include any of this documentation to the board before we begin the process
Okay.
well in advance so that you can take a look at it and provide input.
Thank you.
I have questions, but does anyone else? Please go ahead.
I was just wondering, can we consider for that trial run looking at, either extending it on one end or the other for working people. Like 10 to 5 is kind of when, that's sort of like the general business day. So I would sort of ask if maybe we could look at going, on one end or the other to accommodate people who are commuting or, just working.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And if I might add, that was one of my comments as well, and so I don't know what the hours are for the libraries. Obviously, we'll be limited by those hours, but if we could, as early as 8 a.m. to the extent, obviously, the library is open, or 8 is when the library closes, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
The other question I'm sorry, did you have
I had one
anything
more
further?
question.
Go ahead,
but
go ahead.
I just wanted, what I'd like to see, I'm assuming this isn't going public quite yet, but what I'd like to see is the map of where all the locations are, so we can
Yes.
see the coverage. Because it's, for me visually, it's, like I took notes, but I can't see where everything is.
I understand
to
that,
see
and there will be, certainly.
Okay,
Yes.
so before, this is not, we're not sort of voting, this is just an update from
Right,
that
I
perspective.
want to let you all know as the board where we are currently.
That's
and
great.
what we're working towards, so to get input and we can look into additional things. And so the flyer that goes out to the public, I do plan to have a map that shows that coverage and times and.
Great, and the
things of that
7 to
nature.
7, you're looking at coverage for the Monday through Friday? For the
Correct.
whole time? Great, thank you.
To that same point, I know you made mention of South Cobb not being available due to renovations, but obviously, because you were considering South Cobb, you're looking at there needing perhaps to be some additional coverage in the vicinity where that location is. And so, again, we can't help the fact that that this is unavailable, but are we considering an alternative location that's geographically close to South Cobb, to the same point that Ms. Mosbacher made about coverage?
Well, so we're looking at a partnership with the libraries, not only for the trial run, but moving forward because of the many libraries that are offered. They generally are built to cover the county and geographically. I would say that the Austell Advanced in-Person location would be the next best bet there under our current plan. But we haven't researched any other libraries in that area, and up to my knowledge, I don't know that
Or any other?
there would be.
Okay.
But certainly, once they open back up, and I think their plan is to be open by Election Day, because we're going to be using them as a poll, moving forward and into next year, hopefully we'll certainly be there, and it will be a good location for that
Okay,
drop
so
point.
if I understood you correctly, then possibly the Austell Advance voting location could be an alternative to the South Cobb Regional Library that's not available for this trial run, is that correct?
Correct. For those voters that may have been served better by that library, the Austell location would be the next best bet.
Okay. If you could look into that, that would be great.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Steve?
Yes, Bo, at the advanced voting locations, will there be drop boxes?
There won't be drop boxes. You'll be able to hand those in to the manager at that location. So there will be absentee ballot clerks there. The ballots will be in a secured device, but there won't be a drop box that someone can go and place their ballot into.
Right. So there are no more drop boxes, whether from an advanced voting perspective, and then this is a question, it's not a statement. It's a question, I think, for everyone's clarification.
We do have one drop box at the main office in our lobby that
Right.
that a voter would be able to go in and place their ballot in vote during voting hours or staffed hours.
Right, staffed hours. But with regard to this trial run, with regard to the advanced voting collection at these potentially, there are no more drop boxes.
But there are advanced voting
There's a
ways to
mechanism by
deposit
which
it.
you can
In other words,
receive.
You don't have to go through the early voting process and actually vote on a machine. You can bring in an absentee ballot and turn it in at that location.
You can, and that's why we're doing this trial run, to be able to give another option, because there's a level of confusion with the voters and with the workers when that happens. So we want to be able to provide another option, even one that may be close to an advance in-person location, where a person can just go and hand in their ballot without any confusion of, do I wait in line here to vote with the vote in-person people? Do I get to go to the front? How do the voters that are standing in line feel about me going to the front? And that type of confusion. So again, trial run here, probably generally lower turnout in a municipal election or in East Blast, even though we want high turnout all the time. But this will help in those more congested elections with the flow, I believe. But in short, yes, you can take your your ballot to an advance in-person location, hand it into an absentee ballot clerk. But gone are the days, except for the main office, of dropping your ballot into a drop box anytime you want to.
They hand it to somebody, feel like they've done it.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Sorry. So when somebody comes to hand in that ballot, so prior, it was like, I walked up, I put it in the drop box, I walked back to my car, it was a 2-second process, right? What's the process or time commitment that the voter is making now to actually, hand that in? Are we checking that in while they're still there?
We will be checking that the information is, that the general information is there, and then it will be checked into the ENET system, so that by the time that the voter gets home, they should see that their ballot has been cast.
And do they need to
So-
stand and wait for that process?
They would not necessarily have to stand and wait for it.
Okay, so it still can be the
It's
same
gonna-
simplified, like, here it is, back in my car, run in and go kind of
Correct.
thing? Okay.
Correct. I would like to mention one more thing, if there are any questions. We tried to take into consideration, or we will be taking into consideration, the closing time of the libraries with our last hour to turn in a ballot there, because we don't want to interfere with any of the regular business close down. So we want to build in, not saying that we're not going to add on to the beginning or end of our time frame, but we want to take into consideration the amount of time that the paperwork that we need to be ready before we leave that location is taken care of at around the same time that the library is going to close and those employees will be leaving anyway. So there may be a bit of a time, an hour, say, before the library closes, that our actual drop-off deadline will take place.
And with respect to kind of the publication and getting the messaging out to the voting public, once obviously the plan has been finalized, what are our thoughts around what a process that will take?
We want to circulate the standard advance in person or absentee voting options flyer that we do that will also be posted online. I think now through communications we have blast emails and notifications that go out through social media. So we'll be taking advantage of all of those, and I can't encourage enough people to go and check our website to see any news and updates that may be out there, or subscribe to the county communication blast when possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on the communication blast. Admittedly, I was not on the communication blast until recently. And while we definitely appreciate the fact that the information is on the website and available via the blast, to the extent that we can leverage, we have to meet people where they are and meet where they are different means and mechanisms of social media, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Instagram, and so I think that we really need to, because this is a very large shift. While it's appreciated, what you and your team are undertaking as far as these trials, as you've noted, it's an extremely large shift in the way that voters have previously voted, most recently in the last election. Admittedly, those drop boxes were the function of, or they came out of this emergency order, but I could see individuals going and looking for them. And so I think we need to make every effort to get the message out that you're voting differently. And so what I would ask on behalf of the board, and obviously others chime in, is a communication plan in addition to supplement or to go along with this, the voting plan.
Okay. Thank you.
And I was going to say, if we had the ability, I think if we're going to be using specific libraries, it would be good if there was some sort of flyer or poster or something that went into the libraries. Because my guess is a lot of people who patronize the libraries, will look at those kind of boards, those message boards, those kind of places, and those will also be the same people who come back to drop off a ballot there or tell their neighbor, hey, we can go to our library. So I think if we are going to use libraries as those public spaces, we could also maybe design something some kind of board. They always have some kind of easel or something in the front when you walk in. So if we could think about that, I don't know if there's budget for that.
But the libraries have been good in the past about posting our flyers. So, in this partnership with them, we can certainly research other options as well.
Yeah, just something that was clear about, I think, to your point about this being a shift from drop boxes to dropping off in person, just kind of something, visually, aesthetically pleasing that catches somebody's eye as they're walking in, that says, not just here's all the early vote stuff mushed into a flyer, but here is where you can actually take your ballot and check in. So just something to think about. And
Okay.
I like the idea of a communication plan.
this is the trial process. What's our intent for early voting locations for next year for the primary and general election?
So we're not at the point where I want to comment on that in detail, but we will be ramping up to meet the need of that more congested, heavily voted election. The general cycles every even year is always, they're always going to be the higher turnout.
Right.
So,
Just anticipating that, the libraries, I think, are excellent choice, a great choice, but I don't think they're sufficient. I think we need more locations where early voting can be set up, and particularly in larger municipal or county facilities that the Civic Center or Smyrna Community Center, there are facilities that can accommodate lots of people with lots of parking requirements that would exceed what the libraries can do. The libraries, some of them at least, have limited parking. So my opinion is we're going to need many other or several other locations besides just the library in order to handle the load next year because of the changes in the voting rules. It's not going to be as easy for people to either do mail ballots or other advanced voting. And having more locations is about the only relief we can give them in terms of those who don't want to go to their precinct and deal with the lines and the delays. So I would just urge you to go for a large number of additional early voting sites next year, not this year.
okay, thank you.
So just one point of clarification, just so that I'm certain that I understood you correctly. The libraries are with respect to staffing an individual there that can serve as the recipient of a absentee ballot, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then the community centers, one in each municipality, plus 2 additional county locations are for your 3 weeks of advance early voting, in-person voting, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I do recognize the point that Mr. Bruning made with regard to perhaps next year having more locations where there is an individual to receive that absentee ballot. So post-trial, just making this more pervasive, making there more opportunities for the ability to hand something to someone.
Yes, absolutely. And again, that's all part of the process that is taking place now. There are a number of locations that are available, but we're not ready to advertise those as of yet.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Mr. Garland?
What's the legality of all of this according to the new laws? Is this legal?
It is.
Then my final question, I scribbled notes as quickly as I could, but if you could provide just a written summation of what you described with regard to the advance early voting locations, i.e. I go in and submit my ballot versus submitting in advance an absentee ballot, that would be helpful,
Okay.
such that it could be distributed to the members of the board.
You got it. Thank you. Oh,
I keep saying last question. I'll stop doing that. When do you anticipate proposing the final plan?
So again, the deadline is September 27th, but
Right.
as soon as possible is always my goal so that the voters can make their plan.
Sure.
I would hope by the end of August.
Okay, excellent.
Anything else?
I got you. No, I have no further questions. Does anyone else have further questions?
No,
Thank you, Mr.
I
Cobb.
appreciate it.
I believe next, are you presenting?
Yes.
Audrey? Okay.
If it's okay, I'll just go from here
That's fine.
because it was just a brief overview of what we're doing next week.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just to tag on to what you said about a communication plan, just to let you know, We did shoot a video on Friday. It's going to end up being about 9 minutes, is my understanding, talking about what things have changed with absentee voting and what some of the timeframes are now and what's different about there not being drop boxes, et cetera. So that should be ready to publish sometime next week. And we'll put that on our website and the county's website. It'll go out through social media. It'll go out in our newsletter blast as well.
Okay. Is that on YouTube, so the social media?
Yeah, it'll be
YouTube,
linked
Facebook?
probably on YouTube, but
Okay.
the link will be sent out through, Twitter and Facebook and the other social media channels that the county uses.
Okay.
Speaking of that, what is the first day that absentee voting applications can be submitted?
Yes, and that is in the video, but the first day that we can accept an absentee application is October 16th, which is next Monday. So we have received some applications already. I'm sorry, August 16th. We have received some applications, and they have been rejected because they were too early. So the only time frame we can accept the application is August 16th through October 22nd. So there's a too early and a too late.
So if there's anybody out there watching, don't send your application in too early. Wait until Monday.
That
Right.
raises a question, and thank you for asking that, Steve, question, Steve. With regard to those absentee ballot applications that have been received too early, you said you've received some. Obviously, they're ineffective. Is there a process by which we will contact those applicants?
Yes, so from whatever means they submitted it, we will contact them through that same method. So if they emailed it, we'll email them back. If they mailed it, we'll mail it back to them, and we'll just tell them that it's been rejected and they can reapply as of August 16th.
And with regard to the August 16th date, a week from today, is there going to be any kind of mass communication that goes out, leveraging all of the communication methods we've been talking about to let people know that, hey, today is the first day and it's open until, that date certain in October?
Yes, that is our plan.
Okay.
Yes. And now ballots themselves, though, won't be able to be mailed out until October 11th. So this is just for applications. We'll have quite an extensive period of receiving applications, and then ballots are not mailed out until October 11th. That's another thing in the new law, that we cannot mail them out until 22 days before the election.
Okay. Similar question. So just to manage the expectations of those individuals that have submitted those applications, such that they're like, I submitted my application on September the 1st, here it is a month later, October the 1st, I still don't have it. A communication plan around announcing that ballots should be in the mail,
Right.
starting at particular.
Right. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Our practice is usually whenever there is a milestone date like that, that we send out something in social media. That seems to be the most effective way to get that out there. And so we would do that. First of all, when they apply, they get a response back saying, we received it. If it's within the time frame that we can accept it, we've received it, we've accepted it, ballots will be mailed out on October 11th. So they get that when they apply. But we'll also mail or do in social media some information about that as well.
Okay. One question for you. With respect to the social media accounts, correct me if I'm wrong, these are the Cobb County social media accounts that are used for all departments.
Yes.
Perhaps something to consider is whether we have an elections and registration separate social media account, such that I don't know how heavily popular or trafficked the social media account is. However, the concern would be, let's say you post something and then 5 other departments post something that same day, and this very important communication about today's the day to start requesting absentee ballots, today's the day ballots are sent out, gets buried. So I don't know whether that's something that's been considered.
It has been, and we've gone with the other direction because people have to subscribe. And so the county already has a large number of subscribers who are interested in many different things about the county, DOT and, you know, community development, events, parks, all kinds of things like that. So they're already subscribed. If we were to start fresh with our own channel, we would have to start from zero and get people to subscribe. For instance, our newsletter that is our blast, what we call it, where we push messages out, we have just over 500 subscribers. And so I'm certain that the county has many more than that. And it's already established. So we're going with them.
Okay. Well, maybe, and I definitely understand that, maybe it's a matter of kind of the language that's used in connection to the post such that it begins to, quote, trend and become viral. I don't know who crafts the language, you know, the 141 characters on Twitter, but, you know, something such that it gets picked up.
Right, yeah.
And there is sorry, one quick thing. There are newsletters beyond just, like, there's a whole host of different newsletters that go out, right? Does the, you know, for instance, when the general Cobb County one comes out or the library one comes out, we could potentially put in there, you know, early vote applications are the period that they're accepting or they're open today. You know, because I don't know who coordinates all the different newsletters, but there's probably 20 of them.
And generally speaking, what we do is we contact the commissioner's assistants and we put our messages in the commissioner's newsletters. That way we're hitting, the chair has a countywide audience and then each district has an audience that they've established as well.
Great, so it'll go in those newsletters
Yes.
then, too?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
I will say to Jennifer's point, though, if there is a newsletter that goes out that addresses library matters for the county, all of the information that Mr. Gunn provided to us with respect to the use of libraries and what can take place there, that should be included, or I would assume it would be included, be appropriate to include that in the library newsletter. So I think to
There is a
Jennifer's
library
point.
one, I get that one, too.
Right, so just to that point, leveraging the commissioner's newsletters, obviously our own, but then looking at other county departmental newsletters that it might make sense to include the information in to make certain we get the broadest coverage.
We can certainly contact the libraries and see if they're willing to put that in their newsletter.
Okay.
So unless there are other questions about that, I'm sorry to diverge from what was on the agenda item, but just to let you all know that next week, the week of August 16th, is not only the date for applying for absentee ballots, but it is also the start of qualifying week for candidates who want to run for office in the city elections. And we are conducting the elections for the 5 cities that are having elections this year. And so we also are going to be qualifying candidates. And what that means is that we have 2 people from our office that go to each of those cities. So we'll have a total of 10 people out of the office for the 3 days that they're conducting qualifying. And we, make sure that they do their qualifying paperwork correctly, that they are paying the fees correctly, and accept the fees for the city as we qualify the candidates. We check their voter registration to make sure that they are properly registered in the city. So that will be something that we do for all of the cities that we conduct the elections for.
Okay. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we were talking at our last meeting about managing these elections for the cities, the cost of the election is borne by the city such that they reimburse the county. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I presume then that they will also reimburse the county for the time of these 10 individuals that are out of your office to support this qualifying process?
Yes, that's something that we put together in the invoice that we send to the cities with the total costs. The time of the people that are going out there, the mileage to go out there, any other incidental costs are billed back to the city.
Okay. Anything further? Janine, did you have anything further?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, board member comment. This time we'll open it up for any comments. Mr. Garland? Mr. Brooding?
I guess we've all received some communication about our selection of the Cooper 01 new precinct location, and I'm a little surprised we didn't have any public comment on that, because
Likewise.
that seemed to be an issue with some people, and just encourage anyone to comment on that and bring it to us, because if we don't hear, we can't judge. So, just a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Vernon. Any comment? Jennifer, any comment?
I'm not sure if this is exactly the right place to say this, but I just wanted to know how everybody maybe felt about interspersing some of our board meetings with work sessions. I feel like I sort of have had some conversations one-on-one with some of you, and I feel like, it might be good in specific relation to things like Cooper 01 or Sewer Mill, where we might have some greater discussion. I just wanted to bring up that idea of maybe, I know the Board of Commissioners has work sessions, and so does the school board, but maybe we should look at filtering those in, whether it was once a quarter. I didn't know how people felt about that, but definitely something where we could just have the opportunity to work through some of these things before we have to actually vote on them.
Sure.
So,
No, I always defer. I don't want to be the talking head up here, so just wanted to see if anyone has a comment. I do have comment with regard to that, Jennifer. I think it's a good idea. I know we've had a one-on-one conversation. I think some of it relates to kind of just getting up to speed, as obviously there are a number of us that are new on the board, but there are certain things that require conversation and discussion. Obviously, it needs to be done in a manner in which the public has access to us during that discussion. But sometimes getting the information, a couple of days prior isn't completely sufficient. At least I'll speak for myself, to make an informed decision. And I think to a certain extent that's kind of contributed to the Cooper 01 issue. I have now driven by that proposed facility and have a greater sense of some of the concern that was raised in the communications that were provided to us. I'm going to put a pin in that for just a moment, but I do agree with your comment.
yeah, I just didn't know how we go about doing that, except to just bring it up to everybody in one setting.
Right.
So that's, yeah. I don't know if Janine has comment about that, or if that's been done before.
No, it hasn't been done before, but if the board would like to schedule a meeting and has an agenda proposal, we'd be happy to schedule that.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Anything further on that? Well, then I will go back to what I put a pin in, the Cooper 1 conversation that took place and decision or vote that took place at the last meeting that we had that Mr. Bruning raised. Admittedly, there has been a fair amount of communication, some of which has made its way to me. I would imagine, each of you all have had members of the public, elected officials, any number of folks that have reached out to you. And admittedly, and in full transparency, I did have a conversation with Janine about this last Friday and the possibility of revisiting that decision that this board made. And so I think at this point, I do want to ask that we put that back on the table. My understanding is that polling location, the change would not be effective until January 1. So revisiting that vote will not complicate anything with regard to the election that is coming up in November. And so with that, I will open up for any comment from my colleagues.
I'm definitely in agreement that it would be beneficial to open that discussion again. I think that I also have received a good bit of feedback, so I am in agreement about that.
Okay. So if we could have that as an agenda item for our next meeting, I believe that would be prudent. Then there's another item that we discussed at the last meeting, and I just want to make sure that procedurally we are where we should be. with regard to that. And so there was a proposal that was provided to us, and we did not accept that proposal, but we proposed an alternative and then subsequently voted in favor unanimously of that proposal. The question here is whether that proposal that we voted unanimously to approve is effective. Is that approval effective, given the fact that there was not public notice of the alternative that we approved?
What was that?
I'm pulling it up now. Let me get Sewell Mill.
It was the Sewell Mill. We decided not to, we decided not to split the precinct and just to take, but I believe what was published in the legal organ was the split piece of the proposal and making two separate polls. So I was curious, I think we were curious if that's,
Yeah.
if that vote was legal then.
The notice is a notice to the voters in that precinct that a public hearing will be held and that the polling place will be changed, and the proposal was the split. The polling place was changed.
Okay.
Okay. So it's the change and not the details of the change that is sufficient to meet the notice requirement? Okay. Okay. Well, it's fair, and thank you, Ms. Mossberger, for bringing that to our attention, as she brought it to my attention. So again, we just wanted to make certain that the notice was effective. Anything further on public comment, or I'm sorry, board comment?
Chairwoman? You mentioned that you wanted to revisit the Cooper 01 at the next meeting. We have been trying to schedule a special meeting. Are you talking about that, if we're able to schedule it, or are you talking about the next regular meeting?
Yes, if we're able to schedule the next, or I'm sorry, that special meeting, it would be, I believe it would be appropriate to take it up there.
Okay, so are all the board members able to then give us some scheduling time at this point? Because we do have to make the notice tomorrow.
Okay. So this is the availability during the week of August the 23rd?
Yeah. I am not available,
Okay.
so.
I'm sorry, Pat, are you?
I would be
Are you
available.
are here, okay. I know I've shared my limitation, but I will be as flexible as possible to ensure that we have quorum. I believe you've shared your availability, correct? Can you share your availability, Jessica? Or, I'm
Question.
sorry, Jennifer.
What would be the problem with having that discussion at the next regular meeting? September. Yeah, September.
You could do that.
We could, again, it's problematic to try and notify the voters of the change the later we go.
But you can't notify them until after the November election, can you?
No, this would be for a change in the November election.
He's talking about
The
two
reason
different
for
things.
the special called
He's
meeting.
talking about,
You're talking about Cooper 01?
Yeah.
Right.
No, I'm talking about the special meeting was necessary for another precinct.
Oh,
Right.
right.
but if you're not going to be here and you want to have it at the next meeting, it could be at the September meeting.
That's what I was asking.
Right.
Sure.
Okay,
We're talking about the Dobbins 02 piece.
correct.
The Dobbins
Yeah, so-
02 piece must take place via a special meeting.
And we should do that quickly because that
Exactly.
one has to move.
And that will be impacted for the November.
Yes.
Right. The Cooper, or Sewell, no, I'm sorry, Cooper 1 is not effective until January, so we could kick that to the September meeting.
We don't need to bundle. Exactly. We can
Okay.
just do the one in this emergency meeting so that we can get effective notice out to the voters in time versus pushing that one, the Dobbins one, to September.
That's
Would
correct.
make the most sense from a voter communication.
Right.
So Jessica can be here that week except the 23rd, correct?
Yes.
And same with, I'm actually the same. I can be here that week except for the 23rd.
Okay, so what day do y'all want it?
I can actually be available virtually that week because I won't physically be in town.
Is
But I have
everyone
to- then I
available
have
on
to
the
have-
25th?
Then I have to have a quorum here.
You have to have a quorum
You can
in
attend.
person.
In person, you can attend and
you will,
vote. but
and
I-
you'll have that with myself, Mr. Gartland, and
Yes, yes,
Ms. Mossbacher?
yes.
Okay.
Great. I am able to do the 25th. in person?
Are we talking the standard 3 PM time?
It could be any time.
Okay. And I think we discussed potentially holding this, or I'm sorry, and speaking with Ms. Evler, I potentially discussed holding this to, so that we're not limited by the constraints of this room at Whitlock.
I'm not able to click on, so.
We have
here.
confidence that
It's
you'll
on.
project.
Okay, there it is. Yes, we can do it at Whitlock. We have the ability to do it as a WebEx, but we don't have the ability to broadcast it. But it's, again, it would be a single item meeting for an emergency polling place change.
Okay. All right.
So the 25th, and you'll tell me what time works.
I think we can go ahead and decide that now.
Just keep it to 3 PM if
If that's fine for everyone?
I
Or
can
4
do-
PM?
I can do either one.
Mr. Garland?
Good.
Okay.
You just tell me when.
Okay. So what,
I won't be here, but.
However.
Just to harken back 30 years, we used to do these special ones at noon in the library, just so that we could get in, get out, get back to work quick. It's just a suggestion
okay.
as an alternate versus 3 o'clock where you've got to, break up the whole day.
I'm fine from 3 on, was just trying to provide the opportunity to kind of commute. I know, managing children coming and going and all the rest, so.
Yeah, I mean, I will always have that issue at 3 PM.
Okay, right.
That's a consistent issue, but I mean, I'm fine, I can make arrangements at this point, so.
Okay.
If you want me to, whatever works best for you, because you're starting a new job, so you tell me, you like the 3?
I don't know.
You tell me.
So I'm going to show up and tell them, hey, by the way, thank you for letting me work here. I cannot do this on such and such a
Right.
date. So 4 PM is fine.
Can we do 4?
August the 25th at 4 PM.
August 25th at 4.
Okay, great. And that will be at
Jessica,
Whit,
You'll be remote, Jessica, and Steve, you're
I've,
out.
I've emailed that I'll be remote.
Great.
okay. And to be certain, that will be at Whitlock.
Yes, we can schedule it at Whitlock,
Okay.
assuming no one else has the room, but we'll check.
Okay.
Would that meeting be open to the public?
Yes. And that's the notice, Janine, that you were just speaking of, that you need to get out by tomorrow. Is that correct or no?
Yes,
That's
well,
what-
it will publish in the MDJ on Friday.
Okay.
And to get it into them by Friday, you have to do it by Tuesday at 11 a.m. is their deadline.
Okay.
So that's why we needed it now.
Okay. But just to clarify, we are considering the fact of making this decision right now, such that we can meet the time frame, so that the public is aware so they can attend. Any further board comment? There being none. Obviously, our next meeting, special called meeting that will take place on August the 25th. Our next scheduled board meeting will take place on September the 13th, here, our regular meeting at 3 PM. Is there a need for executive session? No? Okay. With that, if there is nothing further, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded to adjourn the meeting at 3:59 PM.